Welcome to the Hanley Effect, a podcast by the Hanley Foundation designed to educate, change minds, and save lives. Our goal is to inspire you, showcase our innovations, and change the conversation about addiction and mental health. Join us as we unravel stories of resilience, recovery, and hope.
Well, hi, everybody. Welcome to the podcast. I'm Dr. John Dyben.
I am Dr. Rachel Docekal.
And we are excited today, once again, to have our special guest, Steve Campana. We'll tell you about him in just a moment.
Wait a minute. Is he the special guest?
He's the special guest.
He's the special guest?
I'm sorry. Wait.
Come on.
So let's just be clear that there are four of us in here. One doesn't have a mic at the moment, but the really special guest was brought by Steve. We're going to let Steve talk a little bit about the most special guest, Mac. So this is the day of Mac.
This is Macadoodle's day. I believe Mac's real name is Macadoodle.
I think that's what you named Mac.
Really?
No.
Oh, Steve Campana is giving us the no sign.
He's shaking his head. And now he's giving us the kind of the shrugging his shoulders.
This is the podcast of pantomimes.
Just to be clear, Steve.
We do speak here.
Yes, and nobody can see you. But Steve Campana, I'm going to let you talk a little bit about yourself, but we're excited because today we want to talk about recovery, specifically with first responders. And Steve he'll talk about himself, but man, I just got to say, he's an impressive human being. He's a good friend. He's an excellent colleague. The man spent 30 years serving his community in the fire service, finishing as a captain. And today he dedicates his life and all his time, all his energy to helping people who have the disease of addiction get better, find recovery.
So for me, there are some people who you just look at and say, wow, like that person is doing work that takes my breath away every day. That is Steve to me. Every day he is driven by mission in a way that inspires all of us. I'm lucky when he comes in and spreads some of that love to me and to the rest of the staff. And I'm blown away by you, Steve.
Thank you. Thank you. You create an atmosphere to allow me to do that. You've really created a culture here within Hanley that is very easy to embrace. You know, there's culture in the fire service, and there's many different levels of culture. There's a brotherhood. There's just so many different levels. But here at Hanley, I get to be happy, and I get to be my authentic self, which I never was before, because for all those years, working as a firefighter, paramedic, and retiring out as an EMS captain, I let that position define me up until 2017 when I crashed and burned. Even when I got sober 10 years before that, I still let the position define me. And I didn't know who my authentic self was. And when I came to Hanley, I had that opportunity to be able to work through all of that and go on this really cool journey with God. My spiritual experience is just like it says in Appendix 2. It's of the educational variety. It wasn't the white light God moment. I think we all want to hear God's voice, right? We're all seeking it. But it came over a period of time. And it probably wasn't until my second or third year sober that I really started to feel like I was walking with a God of my understanding. And and that helped me find out who my authentic self was. So when I come to Hanley, I get to be that person.
You know what really strikes me about your story, Steve? Remind us how many years you were out there in the field before 2017.
So it was a combined 32 years with Palm Beach County Fire Rescue because I did a little over 30 in operations, and I did a little more than a year and a half in dispatch when I was 18 years old. But let's go back even further. I started out at the age of about 13 as a police explorer in the village of North Palm Beach. What a great organization that is, and gave me a great foundation in discipline. It also gave me a sense of being. I was a transplant from New York at a young age. It gave me something to do. It really helped me fall in love with the fire service because I had an opportunity to ride with Back then, North Palm was a public safety department, so they did police, fire, and EMS. And the person I gravitated to was Sergeant Jack Watrous, and he was a paramedic, a firefighter, and a cop. So I got to ride with him in the ride-along program. He was a huge influence on me. So that started at that age. So there was over 40 years of service.
Mm-hmm. So service then, service now. I'm hearing a theme here.
Yeah, well, that's something that we struggle with in retirement. All first responders struggle with purpose in retirement. You know, for all those years, when you woke up in the morning, you knew what you were going to do. And you knew that for some, it was a noble calling, a higher calling, that you were going to go do good. And it just came with a lot of consequences. It came with a lot of consequences, but it gave you a sense of purpose. You know, I am doing good in this world. I am helping my fellow man and woman in this world. And I took great pride in that. And I tried to make myself the best that I could be. And as Dr. Dyben was saying, I did climb the ranks to EMS captain. That's what I retired out as. But I had the opportunity to do some really cool stuff along the way. I tended to work in the lower socioeconomical areas of the county. I got to spend a lot of years out in Belglade. I got to spend some time on Trauma Hawk back when we had the Bell 412 as well as the S76 program. I got to be a SWAT medic for the sheriff's office, which was cool. And I got to be a captain in the training division. Yeah, it was some fun stuff.
What does a SWAT medic do?
Makes a hole and plugs a hole.
Okay.
Basically, the nitty gritty of it. But here in Palm Beach County, there are 5 or 6, I think maybe now, firefighter paramedics from Palm Beach County Fire Rescue that once accepted to the program, they go to police academy. They're sworn in by the sheriff. They become a deputy. And whenever the SWAT team is activated for anything like high liability warrants or call outs or anything that the SWAT team is doing, they have to have 2 medics attached to the team at all times. So you literally could be doing, something around the house, and back in the day, your pager went off. And when your pager went off, it was drop and go.
Wow.
It didn't matter what you were doing. It was drop and go. And it was fun. You were primarily in the background. You weren't in the foreground back then. It's maybe a little different now, but there was some, it was another level of education. It was something else to do. It was more adrenaline, more jazz.
So you got this whole list of things, and really you're starting at a young age. There's something that's attracted you. What was it that attracted you to that kind of service, law enforcement and EMS? Was there something, because you're talking about like from the time you were a kid.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I grew up watching Emergency, 1 Adam 12,
Mm-hmm.
All those good old time cop and firefighter shows, which I love and still love to this day. Whenever they come on, I try to watch them. I was attracted to it in that sense, but I just found the work to be easy. In my heart, I knew it was a gift at a young age to be able to do certain things that people really shouldn't be put into a position to have to do, or to make a decision where some people shouldn't have to. And for me, it was very easy to compartmentalize. I was very, very good at compartmentalizing things in my life.
Let's pause there, because for me, the type of job that you did is one where every day you would leave your home and say, okay, today I'm going to go out and put myself in danger for other people to help save others. I'm watching my words. I'm sure the audience can tell, because once I called Steve a hero, and he did not like that. He did not like that. Why didn't you like that?
It's just, this is what I did. This is what we do. We're not heroes. I don't see myself as a hero. I see myself as an ordinary guy that had the ability to do some extraordinary things in his life. And like I said before, I found it very easy to make decisions and do things. And it's kind of funny, man. It's not a PTSD moment, but there are just things on a reel in the back of my head as we just talk about that, of those things going off in the back of my head. It's rewarding to know that I was able to do that. And it was rewarding to know that even though some people that didn't like my approach, my attitude, and sometimes the way I treated people, because Rachel, I wasn't like this my whole life. And we can talk about that in a minute about where I really missed the mark in the fire service. I prided myself on the fact that when I showed up, people would literally say, Campana's here. When I wasn't on the helicopter and I was an EMS captain, one of my mentors on the helicopter could tell what type of call it was before the helicopter ever landed, because if I was out back of the rescue, he knew that the guys had it handled. It was a pretty standard call. I don't want to ever call it a routine call. But if he heard my voice on the radio or he knew my truck was attached to the call and I wasn't standing outside, that I was elbows deep. And the best compliment I ever got as an EMS captain was from that gentleman. And he said, when you receive a highly critical patient from Steve Campana, it's like getting a present on Christmas morning. It's all wrapped up with a little bow and it looks perfect and you'll never have to worry about anything. And that blew my mind, when my mentor said that to me. Cool dude.
Those of us that haven't done that work, right? 1 Adam 12, man, you just brought up, boy, that's a talk about oldie but goodies. But there are some things that we see on TV, we see in movies, but they're kind of unimaginable. And they're things that you've lived. And you just mentioned 2 things, because one of the things that we do, we're talking about substance use and addiction and what you see in the service with that. But you also talked about compartmentalizing, and you mentioned PTSD. And I wonder if we could talk about those 3 things for just a minute. When you talk about compartmentalizing, I think of, sometimes someone might come to a therapist and say, man, I really feel nervous at work. And so the therapist might give them tools and techniques to help them get into a calm, parasympathetic state. I would imagine you do that with a firefighter, with a police officer, you'll get somebody really hurt. You can't do that. And so what I've heard in the past is compartmentalizing, which sometimes we think of as an unhealthy thing, can also be really necessary and to some degree. So when we're working with first responders, do you have any thoughts on how therapists can best, and helping professionals, how do they deal with that? On the one hand, you want to help someone be their authentic self. On the other hand, they really do have life and death again and again and again and again.
Yeah. So compartmentalization I used as a tool was literally just the gasoline for the bomb that was going to blow up. It really was. And when that container got so full, that's when I popped. So any first responder that comes off a serious call and tells you, I'm fine, it's just like that T-shirt you see. Right? It says, I'm fine, and guy's got blood all over the side of it. Right. Yeah, I'm fine. Mm-hmm. I'm fine. Probably the 2 worst words, in my opinion. But then again, like I said, I'm not a clinician. Well, I didn't say yet. I'm not a clinician. I'm just a guy that's had some experiences in life. So compartmentalization, it is a necessary evil at the time when you're doing certain things that you have to do. You can't get tunneled on emotion when you're having to do a medical procedure or something that you just shouldn't have to do. Like
something unimaginable.
Yeah, like go hunting for a leg, and find that leg and bring that leg to the truck. Look somebody dying in their eyes that's saying to you, please don't let me die. Please don't let my unborn baby die. And then they die. You shouldn't have to do that in life, but that's just part of what we did. And there's a certain amount of compartmentalization that has to happen while you're doing that, because you're just going to break down and be a puddle of mess and not help anybody at the time when you're supposed to be helping people. And we've seen it in the eyes of our brothers and sisters on calls when it's truly affecting them, and they just lock up, or they just can't function, or they're just staring at you like trying to figure out what's going on here, or they break down after a call. I give them, the people that break down after a call, I give them so much credit for showing their emotions and letting it out. Because when someone ends up being like that after a call, what do I want to do as a supervisor? I want to get them help. Right? Because they're showing emotion. They're showing us that it affected them. Whereas some of us are just walking around, unbuttoning our shirt one more, letting our chest pop out and pounding on it for a little while.
what I'm hearing you say, because you said on one hand it's absolutely necessary, on the other hand it's the gas that almost blew you up. So like compartmentalizing, setting things aside to one side for a minute, it sounds like you're saying it's a necessary tool, but when it becomes the only tool for coping in my whole life, when I don't ever address the traumatic events, the emotions, that's when it so it's sort of like too much of it after the event is what blows people up.
Yeah, when that pot gets so full and it starts spilling over and there's no backup for it, I think that's when I really started leaning heavy on drugs and alcohol. Since I was a kid, I dabbled in drugs and I had drank. My story is an average story of a child who's experimented with maybe a little weed here and there. I did cocaine at a young age one time, but then I didn't revisit it for a lot of years. I drank with the older kids every now and again. I did like the effect of it, but I didn't become a problem drinker, so to speak, until I was into my late 20s and 30s. But there were episodes throughout my career from the beginning when that pot overflowed and I'd lean on the bottle. I'd lean on it hard. And when that didn't work, I'd lean on drugs a little bit. And it was controllable for quite a while until it wasn't.
The piece I took away from that story is the people who showed emotion, the people who released emotion is really what you're saying, are the people you said, oh, golly, I'm going to get them help. But the people who weren't releasing that emotion, they weren't flagged as needing help and likely needed it much, much more.
And that culture is shifting. Mental health and suicide awareness is all becoming much more on the forefront in the first responder community. It's nowhere near what it needs to be, but it's definitely come light years just from when I retired 3 years ago. Back in the day, the attitude was suck it up, buttercup, move forward, more calls to run, more the better, let's go. That was the culture and the attitude back then. And that's shifting and changing. That person that broke down with emotion back in my day, especially in my junior day, nobody wanted to work with that person because you didn't know how they were going to react in the heat of battle. And yeah, down here in South Florida, we do fight a lot of fire, not as much as your professional full-time fire departments of, let's say, the traditional Northeast or North. But we do fight fire down here. We do work car accidents. We do use the jaws of life. But a majority of your job is EMS down here. I don't know what the current stats were, but when I was, on the trucks, it was over 80% was EMS. And I gravitated to that because it came easy and it was good. Hey, did I like a rip and fire? Did I like to tear a car apart? Absolutely. Break stuff. Love it. But I also took a liking to EMS because it just came naturally. I didn't study in paramedic school. I used to joke with the professor all the time, Al Howe. It just came easy. It came naturally. I could go to a class and on a new piece of equipment, listen to what they said, read the manual, dissect it, digest it, and then regurgitate it so that everybody can understand it in a matter of hours and then go teach it the next day. It just came easy.
So it was just this natural, perfect fit from the start.
Yep.
So when you talk about, so you had this natural, perfect fit, but there was still something missing that you said it wasn't, you still weren't your true, authentic self. You're good at what you do. People respect what you do, whether they like your attitude or not. It's just the easiest, we use the word easy. How can that be? I think somebody from the outside might have looked and said, hey, you're able to do all this stuff. Man, you definitely know who you are. But you're saying no.
I was always searching for something. I always felt different from a young age. I always did. I always felt left out, even though I probably wasn't. I always felt like I wanted more, even though I didn't need. If you had something better than me, I wanted it. And I didn't want to work for it. I just wanted it. So I always felt a little different, even though I wasn't treated differently. So there was always something that was like in me that was like something off. Like I didn't feel a sense of belonging. And when I got good at what I did at a young age, it kind of made me feel like, oh, this is where I belong. And I kind of absorbed some of those personas that were around me, and they weren't good influences. They weren't. I do have a regret about leadership, and that's I had the ability and I was put into a position to where I truly could have led men, but I was a boss. And when I say men, I use it as euphemism. I really was a boss. I was that guy from the back, go forward, whereas leaders are out in the front. I would do whatever it would take to make myself look better on the backs of the people that I worked with. And that wasn't the right attitude, but that's all that I had known at the time. There weren't many leadership classes and skills classes for me to learn that and to know that I was doing things wrong. I probably should have gotten like the wake-up call when I wasn't getting invitations for weddings, parties, stuff like that. But all that would do was make me feel better when I'd show up on a scene and they'd say, oh, thank God you're here.
That's the picture of being good at what you do, but not yet having you're just kind of absorbing others. I love that differentiation between boss and leader, because how could you, if you haven't yet found your real authentic self, how could you be that leader and step out? What does it mean now for you to have your authentic self?
Oh, just prior to retirement, I met this amazing woman, right after I just made this deal with God. I made a deal with God. He laughed at me, right? Man plans, God laughs, I think is the line. And he put this amazing woman into my life, literally dropped her right into my lap in front of me. Everything I said I was going to do in retirement, I didn't. I said I was basically going to retire, pull out of Station 23 in the RV with the Jeep in tow, and I was going to do yoga and AA in 50 states. That was the deal I made. And for the last 14 months of my career, I was just going to work on me. 3 months later, God put Annette in my life, and that changed everything. And right from the beginning, I was honest, forthcoming, hid nothing from her. She knows the darkest secrets in my closet, some that I have only told to a sponsor in the fifth step. She knows all of those things that I did prior to getting sober this time around. And she agrees. She probably would have never have given me the time of day. Because she even got it from some people that knew me through her circles. You're dating who?
That's funny.
Oh, it is. It is.
Especially seeing you two together now after so many years. Mm-hmm. She's really remarkable.
She is. She's a remarkable lady. We're getting her on board as a volunteer here.
Love that.
She's, like I said, she knows everything about me. She takes care of me. Back when I was on the job, she knew if I came off a 24 or a 48 and I called her on the way home to let her know I was coming home, she knew exactly which Steve she was getting. Because even in sobriety, when you have a rough shift, you don't want to talk. You don't want to be verbal. You want to come in the door, get something to eat, especially if I've been up all night. You want to get something to eat. You want a hot shower, and you want a quiet, dark bedroom just for a couple of hours. It doesn't have to be the whole day.
I'm curious about the Steve Campana who did this job sober versus the Steve Campana who did this job using, in the shadows but using.
I had so much more fun my last 3 years. I really did. I had so much more fun. Although there was a lot of adversity, there were people that didn't want to work with me. And that's okay. I earned that. But I never let it affect my smile, my attitude, just like I come to work today. I came to work then. It was just much lighter. It seemed much easier. I don't feel like I had enough time to build those relationships back because I think I created a lot of damage. I did gain respect back from some people, not all. I had people come to me and apologize to me for the way that they treated me my first year back on the job. And I don't want to use the word validating because I didn't need validation. I got validation from my God, just by letting me wake up in the morning sober every morning. It's the only validation I needed. But I just knew that if I did the next right thing all the time, I really didn't have anything to worry about at all. And I got to really just be happy, joyous, and free at work, which I never was before. It was a good time. And in a way, it was a sad time because I was coming to the end. I was coming towards the end of that. But when I looked back in my last year, I was taking a lot of time off. Firefighters build up a lot of vacation time, and a lot of them will just stop working, let's just say in March, but their retirement really isn't until April or May. They accrue that many hours. Because I had met Annette and we were in the midst of COVID, and she was teaching remotely. At the time, she was a school teacher out in the Glades. So she was doing remote learning teaching. I would take a shift or two off, which, as you know, gave us like 9 days off. And I'd drive over to the West Coast, and Annette would wake up at 7 in the morning. She'd start teaching her class, and I'd go outside and tinker, do my thing, go set up on the beach, cook her a lunch. She'd get done at 1, 2 o'clock. We'd be at the beach every day. So I spent my last year preparing to slow down. But I just remember being a lot happier. And one of my mentees, a lady who is a phenomenal firefighter, paramedic, she was a phenomenal lieutenant, captain, and was just promoted into the EMS captain position. And she looked at me one day in the station. She's like, man, I wish we had this Steve 10 years ago. And that hit hard. Although I was happy to hear that, it still hit hard. And that's when I realized that I was not an effective leader back then. I may have been a good mentor at times. I may have been a good teacher at times. And I was I know that I was a good doer, but I wasn't a good leader. And that's the part that hurts most.
Well, I didn't know that, Steve. I know this, Steve. And there are a few things that you just said that make me chuckle. The first is prepare to slow down, because it sounds to me like you slowed down so that you could speed up. The second is you are a leader on this campus, and it sounds like this may be our time to introduce Mac.
You know, we mentioned early on that you had a special, that the real guest today, the real guest, you want to tell us who the real guest is? Who's this Macadoodle?
So the real guest is Mr. Macadoodle, Hanley Campana. He is a 50-pound golden doodle who came through the Paws and Stripes South College program through the Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office.
He is a beauty.
Canine Therapy Dog Unit. The Sheriff's Office has 26 active dogs right now in the field working, and they do everything from they work with people who are going to trial that are witnesses in trial to help calm them down, interviews, large, big incidents they'll go to where they'll calm people. I love telling this story because it speaks to Rachel to the point. I had an insomniatic night. I don't even know if that's a word. I made it up.
It's a great word. It sounds
that
great.
word?
It's official as of right now.
Great. I have those all the time.
Yeah, right. I do too. And I used to work and I often talk about Chief Vicky, which you got to meet.
Oh, yes. She is.
Yeah,
wow.
so Chief Vicky would work. She was an insomniac when she was in the training and safety division. I could send her an email at 3 o'clock in the morning. She'd be responding to it. So I just had one of those nights. It comes and it goes. Even though I'm a recovered alcoholic, I still suffer from PTSD, and that animal rears its ugly head every now and again. And I had one of those nights. There's nothing bad about it. I just couldn't sleep. So I went into a deep dive about holistic ways to help with sleep and PTSD. And, you know, I still see a trauma therapist from time to time. I have a therapist that I'm on ad hoc with. And somehow on this deep dive, I got into therapy dogs. Then I started seeing therapy dogs in first responders, and I just started reading about it. And I think it was like 5:30 in the morning on a Saturday. I sent you the email that just said, have you ever thought about a therapy animal? I think it was parentheses dog for Hanley. And in your fashion, you said, I love that. I think that's what you said. And
For those that don't know, that's what Dr. Docekal always says.
I love that.
Yeah,
it's true.
I love that. And that kind of was like, all right, let me look into this a little bit. So I have a friend in Orange County, a little bit of my history in sobriety. Shortly after I got sober 7 years ago, I walked from West Palm Beach to Tallahassee with this gentleman named Tom Hill. He goes by Bull. That's a whole nother podcast and a whole nother story. But I met this really interesting firefighter paramedic for Orange County by the name of Amy Morton, and she's a canine handler. She is actually a puppy trainer for canine companions. You can go to Netflix, just put in, I think it's called The Mind of a Dog. where canine companions can take a dog at 8 weeks old and be able to tell if this dog is going to be a good service dog. Canine companions keeps them from 8 to 20 weeks. And then someone like Amy gets the dog from 20 weeks to almost 18 months, teaching them their 30 commands. They build a bond with them and a love. So I called her and I'm like, Amos, I got a green light on a therapy dog, I think. What do I do? And she's like, no problem. My nickname is Guido with her. She's like, no problem, Guido. She goes, I got you.
We won't tell anyone.
Oh yeah, of course you won't.
And we
Amos
won't put it on the whiteboard upstairs.
So I call Amos Sissy or Amos. And when Amos tells me, I got this, we're going to figure it out, I don't worry about it. And she very quickly, because she's very excited about anybody that wants to work with dogs. She gets very excited. So she found a few different programs. We went through them and felt that Paws and Stripes Brevard County was the best program for us, not knowing that there was a South College here at Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office. So when we got all the paperwork done, Rachel was actually on vacation. I'm sorry, Dr. Docekal.
Rachel
was on vacation, and Jen Lee signed off on it. I went ahead and sent the application up to Brevard County, and the lady's like, why are you coming all the way up here when South College is in your backyard? I'm like, I couldn't find anything on that. I didn't know there was something here. So that started the relationship, and we're South College's first entity that's non-first responder to receive a dog through them.
And what is Paws and Stripes?
So Paws and Stripes is a program that was initiated in Brevard County by a detective who realized that his personal therapy dog, when brought into work, helped ease victims of crime, people that had to testify in court, as well as during interview processes with potential criminals. He could see subtle cues in them if they were lying or if they were telling the truth. One of them that comes to mind when I was reading about it was you would see somebody pet a dog normally with the grain of their hair when they were telling the truth, but when they were lying, they went against the grain. So that started the program up in Brevard County. So here in Palm Beach County, the inmates from the Stockade, which is a lower level security, lower level prison, or actually jail. I'm sorry, a Stockade is a jail, not a prison. They care for the dogs and they learn basic handling techniques. The deputies are the canine trainers, and these are most deputies are deputies that have come from the canine unit on the road. The two canine handlers that train Mac and me, because, I get trained. Mac don't need no training. The trainers are the ones that need the training, the handlers. They trained Mac for about 6 weeks and realized he was a very special dog. Most of these dogs come from Big Dog Ranch. Mac came to us through a private rescue organization, a not-for-profit, that knew this dog was Paws and Stripes dog. As soon as they got him, they knew he was Hanley's dog. When they made the final decision 2 weeks before the class, I got to go out just to see what I needed to get, right? I want to get eyes on the dog. I want to know how big he is, find out the food he's eating, stuff like that, so we can be prepared to receive him, right? He was working with Deputy Charles, and Deputy Charles was working him for about 2 or 3 minutes, took him off lead and broke him, freed him up, and Mac came running right over to me and jumped in my lap. There's 10 people in that room. And it was just like game on. And by the end of class, 2 weeks, and then the next week they let me come to class. They let me come early to class and train with Mac a couple of days before the official class started. And then at the end of that, they're like, hey man, you should really take him home this weekend and bond with him. We think you do good. And that's when we had Mac's gotcha party, which now we know his official birthday now that we have his paperwork. His official birthday is actually December 2nd, but we did a gotcha birthday party for him. And that weekend we bonded, and when we showed up to class, Nick, one of the instructors, looked over at me and he's like, dude, man, this dog is yours. Just so you know, this dog is yours.
So Mac is the color of caramel. He is fuzzy and has a very handsome head and has been sitting here sleeping the entire time until Steve says his name.
Mm-hmm.
Come here, Mac.
And he just pops his head up, and the love between these two is apparent.
You live with Mac. You bring Mac to work every day. Mac is around the staff here. Mac's around people who are working with people who are fighting for their lives. everybody from the RAs to the nurses to the therapists to the kitchen staff, they can sometimes experience trauma vicariously. What is happening? What are you seeing when you bring Mac around others who are healing professionals? And also, you mentioned PTSD. What happens with you when you're with Mac?
So first and foremost, I've been working on this campus for a year and maybe 4 or 5 months. I was a very active alum. I think, as Dr. Dyben can remember, when pre-COVID, I was on campus 3 days a week. Everybody knows who I am. Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm 6'4", 260 now. Everybody knows who I am. But it seems like in the last 3 weeks, everybody's forgotten my name. And they just go right to Mac. So what does Mac do? Mac right now basically comes to work with me every day and gets walked around the resource center and main campus. I try to hit the main campus once to twice a week for an hour or two just to visit staff. Now, do patients see him? Absolutely. Do patients interact with him? Absolutely. How can they not? Mm-hmm. He's this gorgeous, handsome man who's just happy to let anybody love on him. So what do I see? I see the staff getting out of themselves for a few minutes. I see the staff just loving on this dog and this dog loving them back and reducing stress, reducing blood pressure, reducing anxiety, releasing endorphins, releasing dopamine. We know about all that good stuff that these amazing animals do for people. And we are so close to having a policy. The compliance and Dr. Dyben and Dr. Adams are doing a phenomenal job with just streamlining a policy. It's more, believe it or not, it's more about requirements of handlers in this policy than it is about the clinical aspect of it. I think Dr. Grossman had the best line for a clinical policy for Mac. Mac does what Mac wants. Because literally this is what Mac does. Mac will greet 10 people in a room. I'll put him on a long lead. I'll give him all 6 feet of it. I'll let him go around the room, and then he'll just migrate to somebody. I don't do that. I have nothing to do with it. I'm just the guy that gets to hold the leash and take him home.
And it's remarkable. He usually goes to the person who needs him most.
Our Reiki therapist, Jessie, amazing person. She wants to do Reiki on him because she feels he's an empath. He's a receiver. So she wants to make sure, like she gave me crystals because I asked her about what you had recommended, gave him crystals to help remove that. And I keep those with me. I usually keep them close to him, or I'll pet him with them at night to make sure he's getting rid of that energy, because Mac definitely senses it. He definitely knows.
Just talk quickly about your plans for this department, which is growing.
Mac, hopefully in the next couple of weeks, will be integrated into the clinical atmosphere, where we're going to start, I think, with group sessions. And I think an hour of group in their morning group. I think their morning group is a little over 2 hours long. Just an hour of that for Mac to be able to go in and do nothing more than be Mac while the clinician is running group. Not to interrupt it, not to change it, not to say, Mac's here, everything's going to be okay. It just may help that one person lower their inhibition and share. And say something that they normally wouldn't have said, or just help them be at peace for a short period of time, which may lead to something in the clinical aspect. I love Mac because he's like me. He's got no initials after his name, but we're trying to do good things. We're just trying to do good things for people. So Mac is going to do what Mac does, literally what Dr. Grossman said. Mac's going to walk in a room. Everybody's going to go goo goo gaga for a little while. He's going to migrate to somebody. And hopefully that person will feel the want to get vulnerable. Because we all know that when it comes to substance use disorder, alcoholism, we know that if we don't get to the crux of the problem and we don't have a spiritual experience, we're going to drink again.
The medicine of Mac's helps folks get there.
Mac is his own brand of medicine.
I call them Macs.
That's okay. There's a lot of people
that call them Mac, plural, Macs.
True.
Mac,
you guys are
plural.
So forgiving.
Mac plural, the sound of that sounds so good. More than one Mac.
Well, I think the plans are to have 3
Oh,
eventually.
Max.
She
I
opened
love it.
the door on that. I haven't really shared that with anybody, but in a moment last week when Dr. Docekal, got to connect with Mac, I was in school for a week with Mac. She was out of the office for a week, and then when she came back, she's real busy, and then we had a nice quiet moment. And, I came to the realization very quickly that I can't cover all the units every day, all the time, and still try to be effective at the Patriot program. But I do feel that a 1-hour session, 3 days a week, because we have 6 programs here, I can handle that. And so every unit will get Mac every other week right now. Let's iron this out. Let's figure this out. Let's see what works. Let's see what doesn't. Let's fail a bunch of times and get better at what we're doing, and then build a program.
There's your genuine self. A man who can say, you know what, I'm okay with failing. That's it. That's the difference. That's the genuine self.
Failure wasn't an option before.
That's beautiful.
So I see 2 other dogs. I think a 3-dog unit would be wonderful, and see where it goes. Who knows? This may lead to something bigger and better, or it may not, or it just may be what it is. 3 dogs here at Hanley working together to provide at least every unit a dog once a week. I think that would be amazing. Plus enough one-on-one time at the program director's guidance. I think that needs to be left at that level, because not everyone's going to say, oh yeah, I want a one-on-one with the dog. You know what I mean?
I would. I do.
would.
Who wouldn't?
I do.
Who wouldn't?
He's
And with
so
60
cute.
some odd patients on the unit right now, that would just be crazy.
This is what makes Hanley so special. Everybody brings their unique talent and gifts, and together they make this a remarkable place.
It really does. And unfortunately, we're coming to the end of our time, but I want to ask if I can ask you just for 3 quick things.
Sure.
Hanley has the Patriots program for first responders and vets. And so for those that have that kind of common bond, I wonder real briefly what you would say to a first responder or a vet who is struggling, what you would say to family members of that person, and is there any advice that you would give to professionals like therapists, like to me, working with first responders?
So first, what to say to the fellow brother or sister that's sick and suffering? There's help. You matter, and we care. No one needs to go through it to the extent of what I went through. No one needs to go to the depth that I went to. No one needs to. And there's a way out. There's help, and you matter. More than anything else, you matter. And we care. And we care. To the families, it's not your fault. It's not your fault. I felt that my family should not have to take a bite of that poison apple. And the culture is changing about that, to let the families know what we go through when we go through it, so they can try to understand. But it's not your fault. You probably tried everything within your possibility or anything you could do to make it better, and it wasn't going to. And what was the third question? I'm sorry. Oh, clinicians. What would I say to a clinician? So I'm very proud that our clinicians are going through cultural training in the beginning stages of this Patriots program. But to a clinician, whatever you do, when a first responder or a vet shares something horrific that they've been through, don't ever respond with, what did you do? Well, how did you react to that? Or what did you do? Well, we drank. We did drugs, you idiot. That's what we did. That's how we coped. Or don't cry during a session when someone's pouring it out, because they're just going to clam up. Be non-judgmental. Just listen. Be empathetic. But what I'm proud about with the Patriots program is, as this program progresses along and we get to brick and mortar, this is going to be for us, by us. The program director is going to be a licensed clinician that has former before their name, and we've drawn a hard line in the sand on that. And that's a hard unicorn to find.
Yep.
But once again, in Hanley fashion, we don't cut corners when it comes to patient care. We always do the right thing and right by the patient. And the right thing by the patient in this instance is to have a program director that has been in our shoes and has walked our walk. That's going to help the clinicians more than anything. I've already got RAs knocking on the door that want to be part of this program when it comes to fruition, and we have our own brick and mortar. They want to be part of it, that are retired firefighters, retired military.
And that new building is being designed by former military, former first responders to really appeal to what makes you comfortable.
Yeah, and not to mimic a fire station, police station, or an army base, because that's where we got screwed up. I learned that because I had this grandiose idea that it was going to be like a firehouse and a police station and this and that. And somebody said to me, man, that's where I got screwed up. And when I went to this other facility that was a fire station, I'm like, I got screwed up in a fire station. Now they send me to a fire station to get better. This don't make sense.
Right.
So the building inside and outside will be in Hanley fashion and will meet the architectural look of the other buildings. But I think that we're going to come up with some nuances that'll make it its own.
Specialized uses, yeah.
Yeah, definitely got to have a workout room open 24 hours attached because we are insomniatics, right?
The word's changing. It's getting different.
Yeah,
I love it.
It's better.
Evolving.
I love it. I remember when I used to teach, I used to make up words at time to see if anybody was ever going to challenge me on it.
Not many people would.
Long story short, it's going to be the program's going to be done in Hanley fashion. That's going to be done right. It's going to be credible. It's going to be reputable. It's one of the hardest programs in treatment to run, keep open, start. But we're going to get it right. We're going to get it right from the beginning. We're going to take our time. We're not going to rush. But it's like I tell Rachel all the time, I'm retired. I'm already retired.
Steve, I love you too, man. I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to us, to be so vulnerable, so open, so honest. I know that there's a lot of folks, a lot of your brothers and sisters out there who are struggling, and there's a power hearing your voice. So I thank you. I thank Mac, our real guest, and I'm glad that we're going to have lots of Macs.
3 Macs.
Last word, Rachel Docekal?
Love you, Steve Campana. You are such a special part of Hanley.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Dyben.
John, she's Rachel.
My favorite goofball geek doctor.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you for joining us for the Hanley Effect. To learn more about our programs, visit hanleyfoundation.org or call 844-502-4673.